And thank you for thank you for joining us today. So I do ask if you can please turn on your camera. So I would like this session to be a little as interactive as possible. So I think it'll be helpful. We can all see each other. And so this was essentially designed to be like a small group so that we can have dialogue and discussion with each other. So once again, everyone has the opportunity to unmute, raise your hand, or even chat. So just whenever you want to say something, join in, just like unmute yourself, join the conversation. And then, so if you were to just envision this as being like a classroom setting, this is not like a lecture hall style. Instead, it's more of a round table. So I hope that we can take the time to like learn from one another during this hour. Great, so next slide, Steph. So for the agenda today, I'm first going to go over some fundamentals in terms of like audience, tone, and purpose. And then after that, I'm going to have everyone break out and do like a case study. Then we're going to come back and debrief, and then we're going to jump into another case study after that. Yeah. Next slide. Okay, so when I approach writing, I like to think of like these three as like the core points of writing, being audience, tone, and purpose. And I like to like include all of them when you approach content. And I know that like different writing can be very different in terms of when you think of like an email versus like a report versus social media. But I do like to be intentional in terms of like identifying these three components when you just go into anything. So you want to make sure that you understand like who are you writing for, what are you trying to tell them, and just like how are you going to tell them. Next slide. So when we look at the audience, you're really trying to get at who are you writing for? Who is the person that's going to be reading this? And that could just be like a bunch of different people. You can be trying to reach 100 different people. You can be trying to reach one organization, or you can be trying to reach one individual. So it's important to still try and identify who that cohort is or who that individual is, and try and just like, if you are able to just write their name, because you always want to come back and be centered with that. So just like write that name, who is that person, who is this group, whatever it is, just like try and identify them early on. Then you also want to understand, so what do they know about the topic? So sometimes they are within your industry or they're outside. And this will be helpful in terms of like, if they're outside your industry, you would want to avoid like industry specific jargon. I'm going to use like native C85 as an example. So like people might not know what that is. People might have never heard of that acronym. So you wouldn't just want to like throw that in the first sentence without defining it. And so you also want to ask like, what will they want to know about my topic? What are they interested in? So are they interested in you because of like financial related matters? Are they interested in you because they're interested in native issues? So you want to kind of get at to like, what do they know and how you can align yourself with that, and what level of language is most appropriate for this particular audience. And this does tie a little bit into tone, but you want to get at like, do you want to be professional? Do you want to be casual? So just trying to identify like, how do you shape your message for your audience? Next slide. Okay, so now you want to identify your tone. So how are you going to say your piece? And tone when writing is very similar to like when you speak. So you can say one sentence in a myriad of ways. Like you can say the same sentence angry, you can say it while you're crying, you could say while you're happy. And like the emotion that you project onto it gives that sentence like sort of a different meaning. And you do that you do that in writing as well. But because you don't have inflection in writing, you instead do that with like adjectives. The way that you describe like certain things throughout your writing is how you convey your tone. And some examples of tones that I just like jotted down. Okay, like you can be very sad, you can be very emotional, you can be very sort of like, just kind of like a distress in your writing if you want to kind of convey that urgency or just like sadness in your writing. You can be didactic, you can be sort of like preachy when it comes to your writing, or you can be serious. Like if you're doing something that's very scholarly, academic, you want to maintain sort of like this like elevated, like detached tone throughout. You also want to identify the level of formality you should use. So again, tying back to your audience, like if this is a research paper, you do want to be a little bit more formal versus like if this is social media where you can be more informal. What are keywords you should be using? So going back to kind of like what are the adjectives that you can intersperse throughout? So if you're trying to do one audience, you would say, economic justice. If you're another audience, you would just say capital. So just even the word justice itself is kind of loaded in terms of just like, it's more progressive and social justice-y. So maybe it works for one audience, but not for another. And yeah, so how should you frame your writing? So like, how do you want to go about it? Yeah, next slide. Okay, and you want to identify your purpose. So this might seem very obvious, but I have worked with people who they'll write something and then you're like, okay, why did you write this? And they don't necessarily have an answer. And I think that's because like writing can be a very cathartic experience for us all. It's the way to express yourself. But if you want someone else to read it, you also want to be clear as to like why you're writing it. So when you're writing something, you want to be intentional about like, what is your purpose? And then have a call to action laid into your writing. I don't know how many of you all have experience where you like get an email and you're reading, you're like, okay, why did you email me? Like, what's your ask here? So you just want to make sure that you're very intentional about that as well. And you want to identify that up front. So sometimes you're writing something because you just want to inform people, like maybe you have a new program, or you want to advocate for something, or you're trying to fundraise. And so you want to be clear, like if you're writing to fundraise, your call to action in your writing can be, the last sentence can be like, donate here. Or it could be like, call me for a one-to-one, or like join this webinar to learn more. So you just want to have that line in there that's like, why are people reading this and what should they do next? Okay. Are there any questions so far? Okay, so next slide. Because there are no questions, we're actually just going to jump into the breakout. Okay, so this is going to be like a very hands-on learning experience for us all. So what we're going to do is we're going to break everyone. I believe we have enough for 2 breakout rooms. So everyone's going to be into small groups of 3 to 4. You're going to have 10 minutes, and I already pre-wrote something, and it's in the Google Drive that Stephanie just shared. And so in your breakout rooms, I want everyone to rewrite the content that's in there. And so I think we're only going to have 2 rooms. So group 1 is going to be your audience is funder and investor. Group 2, your audience is a client. So someone locally who you're trying to reach. And I'm going to let it, the only kind of rules that they are is you cannot add more, you cannot make it longer. So there are 2 paragraphs already in there, like as Steph is showing. And so you want to maintain it like kind of like at this length. And I am very strict about that because I have seen that sometimes when people want to write something and they want to make it clear, they tend to add more. But it's like, no, you want to be clear as to like what's already on the page. So even if it's 1 sentence, you want to be clear in that 1 sentence. And I do think this is important to remember because like when you do have to do like a grant application, if anybody has done one, sometimes you do have like a word limit into like how you can answer the application. So you want to make those like, sometimes I think it's like 100 characters or 100 words. So you want to be very intentional with those words. And so, yeah, so you cannot add more, but you can cut as much as you want. You can rewrite it. You can come back with just 2 sentences. That's fine, but it cannot be longer. And then, okay, so you are assigned your audience and you can select your tone and purpose. And I would also say like, don't belabor the tone and purpose, just like pick something and move forward with it. It's really to get to like understand the process of it all. Okay, yeah. So does anybody have any questions before you get into your smaller groups? Okay.
And since we're small enough, I can let you know what group you're in. So Amber, Danny, Louise, and Miranda, you are going to be in group 1. So you're going to be focusing on an investor or funder as your audience. And you'll also click that group 1 link and it should take you right to your slide. And then group 2 is, oh, oops. My bad. Miranda, you're going to be in group 2 because it threw Denise in a group. That'd be cheating. No, just kidding. Yeah. So Miranda, Vincent, and Francesca are going to be group 2. So you're going to be pitching to clients, and you'll click on that group 2 link. Cool. So just rewriting the original example to fit those audiences. Does anyone have any questions before I wooge you away? And everyone's able to access the link? Perfect. Okay, and Denise, how much time do they have?
You will have 10 minutes and then we'll come back and discuss.
All righty, and then you're gonna have 30 seconds to come back and we will wooge away. Denise, you don't have to click the link.
Okay, welcome back everyone. Okay, so does anybody want to share what their experience was like? Like any questions, issues, like were you frustrated, were you confused?
I can start. So I had Luis and Danny in our group, and our case study was Mission Hills Community Lending. We were proposing it to a funder / lender. And so we basically just kind of chopped up the taking out all of the statistics, the percentages, and just kind of summarized we just kind of summarized what we were saying. The Mission Hills Community Lending Center would like to propose our Penny Saver program to help youth in our community to learn to save and budget. And then we just kind of added the very last 2 sentences after that. This will include youth savings account, which we will match dollar for dollar what participants save. We will also offer money management coaching and financial goal setting to help our youth become financial stewards for the community. And then we were working on our last sentence when we got kicked out.
Yeah, Steph, is there a way to like screen share for everyone? Like, would you mind sharing that with everyone, Amber? Because it sounds like you shortened a lot.
What are we sharing? What am I sharing?
Did you write it on, did you do it on the PowerPoint or did you write it on paper?
Oh, I just wrote it on paper.
Oh, okay, then never mind, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit, like, why did you cut it, like, in terms of, like, you know?
Because we kind of felt that there was too many numbers in there, too many percentages. I think our readers, we kind of thought our readers would not really want to know all of those statistics, but more about the program.
It was really interesting to think about the actual people we were writing for as we were writing it. And like, I don't do that in my writing, so I think that's gonna help me out a lot. Just like having that very specific target audience, and then it helps you figure out more easily what's relevant and what's not, because like it's so easy to find a bunch of information that doesn't really need to be there.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I thought something that we identified early on, which was really helpful in thinking about the process, was that last paragraph was like the action step of what the organization is doing to respond. So putting that first for the funders to see, okay, what are they doing? And then thinking about, okay, how do we fill in the rest of it with what they need to know? But starting with the action, I thought was a good way to frame it out.
And then can I ask, did you identify tones and purpose as well? So it seems like a purpose because it was funders, like maybe fundraising or like asking them to support this program. But what did you guys identify as your tone?
I don't think we really talked about that at all. Any of the identified the tone or any of that. We just kind of talked about summarizing, you know, who was our, I guess maybe our audience. We really thought about our audience first and foremost. Are you leaving for the day?
Yeah, no, I think what you guys bring
Oh,
up is
you are?
right. Yeah, so it's like, I know, like, especially like working in communications, like, is it for a nonprofit, you tend to recycle a lot of what you use. Like, you're like, okay, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I don't want like, I don't have the time to just like rewrite something from scratch. So let me like, what's already created that you can just copy and paste. And then, but sometimes you read it and you're like, that doesn't answer the question. Or like, you know, that was intentional that I did throw in a lot of statistics because it's just like, let's just throw in stats because it's like, these are the stats we have, but like, are they relevant? And so it's really identifying like, okay, do these move the audience or is this in line, is this in answering the question that you're or trying to fill the purpose that you're trying to work with? Yeah. How about with the second group, the ones who had to do it for the client?
So we kind of we kind of tried to focus on like the attention grabbing and just making sure that it's clear, you know, to youth after reading it. We kind of got stuck on one part, so when we realized what time it was, we were kind of going through. But I think I kind of added some more. I did do it in Word, so I don't know if I can share my screen just to show the Word clip. Let me see. So what we pretty much did was just saying, which I think should change to San Fernando, but we got stuck on the Mission Community Heals. So pretty much saying, attention, Mission Community Heals youth. What could you achieve if your savings account doubled for every dollar? And then putting in Mission Hills Community Lending Center is introducing Penny Saver in 2022. And then that's kind of where we got cut off, but then I kind of we wanted to add in a statistic. We weren't sure if we wanted to do the statistic prior or after. So we both, we all agreed on doing it after. And then kind of just put in, we want to break the stigma of living paycheck to paycheck, which happens to 63% of people in San Fernando. And then kind of concluding to, you won't be alone in your journey with our money management and financial goal setting, guidance, and coaching. So that's kind of how far we got before we got out of the group.
Yeah, that's great. And can I ask, did you guys identify a tone or purpose?
Yeah, one of the things that we discussed as far as tone was the delivery from our audience and the fact that we were, our audience was younger adults. We wanted the tone to be a little more light and you know, a little more attention grabbing. And so that's why we wanted to start with like a question just to lead them into it, and then kind of try to build off of that attention. So
I think the tone too is kind of like, I think once you're like after that sentence of introducing Penny Saver in 2022, we want to break the stigma of living paycheck. I think the tone is kind of not, it's like uplifting, but then it's kind of like disheartening at the same time, because like you see that 63% of people live paycheck to paycheck, and that's something that can relate to most families, most adults. So I think it's kind of uplifting, and then also just like making you realize, kind of not like bringing you down, but kind of just like, okay, well, someone's trying to stop that number from increasing.
That's great. Yeah, so I just want to open it up to anybody. Like, does the other group, do like you guys have any thoughts? Like, how do you think you guys would approach this one if it were for a different audience?
Their tone came through very well. Is like with the just adding exclamation points is like, this is a really exciting program that you'd really want to get into. And like, I think for like an investor funder tone, you'd want to be more serious and just like straight to the point, whereas this one could be a little more fun and inviting because it's for the community. So it's cool to see those differences.
Oh, I think Amber, I think you're muted.
I think that it kind of depends on us as the writers to really go back and research who our lenders, our funders are, because I don't know if anybody else was in the pre-conference when they did the roundtable discussion with different, I think there was like 3 different funding sources, and they kind of talked about what they look for and some of the red flags that they have when you're submitting you know, your grant or your request for proposal to get this funding. And it kind of helped to see what the types of things that they look for in those fundings. So to me, really researching and understanding who you're writing this to, your audience, is to me is important.
Yeah, and I'm glad that, you know, you both got very like different audiences, and I love how like you both, you know, it was intentional. Like you both had the same source. Like you were both like it was the same 2 paragraphs about like Mission Hills Community Youth or Funding Center in the San Fernando Valley, and like how they took very different shapes using the same information. The same statistics, like they took very different shapes just because like, yeah, it was intentional. It was like you could have the same base, but just like switching a few things here and there to kind of like really reach your audience. Yeah.
I have a quick comment. This is Raven, sorry. I just wanted to say that the last piece, and I missed the beginning of this, I apologize, but the last piece that I think is really important on this youth, the client kind of point of view, it says you won't be alone in your journey. I think that is really important to note, that is gonna catch a lot of, along with the statements and all that at the top. I think just that one little statement that says you won't be alone is gonna capture, you know, a lot of kids, whether that be with other youth or with somebody standing by their side as a mentor.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I really like this one. I really like both of them. If I gave you grades, get A's.
Good job, everybody. Now we can all go into marketing.
Displacing me. Okay, I'm just gonna Bethany jump back to the PowerPoint. So I just wanted to go a little over like some best practices, which honestly it seems like you guys have them covered. So, you know, again, this is conversational. So if you guys want to jump in and share some best practices that you know, like, you know, it seems already you guys came in strong, had some great information, you know, like having exclamation points, doing like a you're not alone. So, you know, just jump in if you guys also, and if you have experience. So like if you have experience working with funders, reaching out to them, just jump in. We can have a dialogue around this. So in terms of like best practices, like a couple of things that I would recommend is like research their focus area. So different funders and investors, they do tend to have kind of like programmatic activities, like they have already in their strategic plan, they have already identified like where their money is going to go out. And so you might be able to fall under someone's programmatic activity for like into a certain programmatic activity. It might be like lending, it might be like regional. So maybe they only lend like out to California, or it might be like they're lending to native communities, they're lending to rural communities, depending on what that dimension is. You really want to like research that. And you can do this, you know, like we talked about, like go on their website, like what do they care about? Who have they funded in the past? And also going on their website is really helpful for that. You can see what kind of language they're using. So are there certain adjectives that they're using? Are there certain like phrases? Are there certain like calls to action that they have? And you can borrow some of that and bring it into your own writing. And they do tend to be, you usually want to write to them in like formal professional language. Does anybody have any other best practices they've seen work be successful?
I've done some grant writing for my organization, and something that I find often challenging is the word limits or the character limits, because you know, you write everything you want to say and then you're like, oh shoot, I have to cut out a third of this. And so I found just in that process of editing, it really forces you to think about what is the most important. And I think like we tend to put in a lot of filler words or like adjectives that sound good, but they don't necessarily like communicate anything additional than if you didn't put it in. So in that process, I always just try to think about what is like the core of what I'm saying, and like, is every word in here moving in that direction, or like what can I take out?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, like I think and the funders do this tricky thing of like they'll ask you some very broad opening questions and they'll give you like 100 words to answer it in. And you're like, how?
Yeah, like the NACA application that's like, okay, now solve all of your problems in your community in 1,500 characters or whatever. Um, it's kind of crazy, but
Does anybody else have any experience like writing out to funders, whether a grant application or just general emails? Okay, we can jump into the client. So with this, I think like you guys really hit it on the head in terms like you want to keep it short and simple. You know, like you're trying to attract someone who's probably like on the move. So like I've heard like, you know, sometimes you'll have like marketing materials like at a town hall or something like that. So like they'll catch it in passing, or even if it's on social media, you know, like if things are very fleeting online. So you want to make it short, simple, attention grabbing. And you can want to follow best practices for advertising. So like use visualizations, graphics, or like pretty pictures, colors, large and bold lettering. And like when we saw with the group, you know, like have that like, hey, you're not alone, we're here with you. Just like something attention grabbing, like statistics that might relate to them. Just like a way to connect with them very quickly. Does anybody have anything they want to add here? Okay, we go on to the next slide. Steph. So we didn't get into these two groups, but we're just going to talk a little bit about them. In terms of we have the press. So this is just like a reporter reaching out to you, or you want to pitch to the media. So like, what are some best practices? Or you're just doing a press release, like announcing something. So just some best practices. It's like, if you're trying to reach out to a reporter, it's like look up past articles to get a sense of their beat. So you wouldn't want to reach out to just like any reporter because they're a reporter. It's like you really want to reach out to the one who will write a story about you. So meaning they have to cover that beat. So just like do a quick Google search, look on like if it's the New York Times, just head over to NewYorkTimes.com and just like what have they written in the past that's related to you, and get a sense of like, or would they be the right person to reach out to for a story. And then with this, be it a press release or just like reaching out to them over email, I would recommend providing some contextual information. So like some data points, quotes, or success stories. So this is really like the press might not exist within your industry. They might, you know, write about it, but they're not within it. They're not subject matter experts the way that you are. So you want to help them out by giving them that information. And so you also want to help them out shape their stories by giving them information. So like they do like to have like an article tend to be very like well written in terms of it includes factual information, includes qualitative data, includes quotes, includes stories. So you just want to give them that leg up by having that there for them. Any questions or anybody want to add to this? Okay, and so the last group, the last category that I added was a congressman or a congressperson or a politician. So this is a little hybrid of a few others in terms of like, you want to keep it short and simple. You also can provide contextual information. So like if you're giving them like a brief, like, hey, congressperson, I think you should vote this way for this thing. You might want to have like some data points in there in terms of like, how is your community affected? Why are you encouraging them to vote a certain way? Maybe include some stories in there. And so just like send it over in a way, I would say like bullet points, just to get them to persuade them. And then you also want to be direct into like what you're doing with them. So like, do you want them to vote a certain way on something? Do you want them to support a certain bill? Do you want them, you know, like come to visit your area? Something like that. Just want to be clear in your ask to them. Okay, and so finally, we are going to do another breakout. So this is very similar. You actually are going to use the same thing as last time, the same source material. But now this time, I want to like switch it up. So you are now going to do, one of you is going to do this for the press, and the other group is going to do for the congressperson or the government ally. So do you guys have any questions? It seems like you guys killed it last time, so I'm sure you'll do it well again. Okay, and so for this one, I think it seemed like they said that you guys were still working, so I think we can increase it to 15 minutes this time.
I have a question, Denise. So for the Congress person, are you assigning us an ask, or are we just coming up with something on our own?
You're coming up with that on your own. So what are you, that's the audience, and it's up to you to decide why are you talking to them.
Okay.
And we had just a few people join us since that last breakout. So I'm going to give you, if you don't mind, Denise, I'm switching it up, new case studies. So we'll do the third case study and then the fourth. And you have new buddies in your room. It wouldn't allow me to just put the new people in the same breakout. So apologies, you have new buddies in your room.
Guys, I have to sit out of this one for a minute because I have to do a follow-up call with the client. Sorry.
No worries.
No worries. So this is group number 3. Group number 3, you're going to be Danny, Francesca, Raven, and Whitney. So it'll be group 3. And you will have, there's your link. And just to let you know, you're going to be the press. So group 3, press. Group 4, and you have this in your chat. Group 4, you have this case study, and that is going to be Louise, Miranda, Sid, and Vincent. You, let me share this. And you are going to have that congressperson or ally. And there's your link. Wait just a few moments. Give me a thumbs up when you've got your link and clicked in and ready to go. Alrighty, so we're gonna have 15 minutes on the clock. You can sit through and work out this case study to your respective audiences. And we will whoosh.
So how that.
Oh, sorry, what?
Okay. We're group 1. This is Francesca. I'm trying to, can we share screen? Yeah. I'll just bring ours up if I can find it. Can you all see it?
Yep.
Okay. So we were writing to the press release. I mean, we weren't like thinking in the way of getting them to write our story, but like more of a press release. Is that okay that we went that direction? So
Yeah.
Yes.
You mean more like an announcement, like
yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And we first just, started the sentence with what we're doing or announcing, and then we said a little bit about it with the high points and attention grabbers, saying, saying, you know, first we're telling them what we're going to do. We're going to offer money management and financial coaching, but to help them save for something that of their own choosing, and then added that match for match in there, because that obviously is the point of this savings account, that they double their savings account. And then ending with, please contact our center for more information on how to get registered.
That's great. And who else was in your group? Just so I can, or in your group so I can know.
Danny and Whitney.
I would say I would only, my only suggestion here would be to also add like a sentence as to like who Mission Hills Community Lending Center is.
Okay. Yes. Okay, so we could have left kind of part of the economic recovery, housing, lending, and coaching opportunities. Okay.
Or you just said like we're a lending institution in the area or something like that. Just like a quick one sentence as to who you are. What about others? What do you all think? Has anybody written to the press or done a press release or sort of like an announcement?
Nope.
Yeah, I have. In my previous job, I have, and it was like a really strong learning curve. Thankfully, there's a lot of resources online to write press releases, but yeah, it was interesting.
We did a press release for our Native Youth Empowerment Symposium, but we had like help with that because we had like some contacts, of course, who are in that media field, and it had, you know, it reached schools and I think like some college students, but it wasn't like a huge, like the numbers didn't come in like huge to sign up and attend, but it was kind of cool just knowing that we did a press release, and I think like some family even like heard it like on the radio or the news, so that, you know, that's really cool. But yeah, we did it for our symposium, but the numbers still, I think, depending on how, I don't know if it was just verbal or if it was the advertisement that we put out, like the flyer we put out, but the numbers still just kind of were not crazy, but it was just cool that we had to use that type of outlet.
Yeah. I think they're definitely with press releases. Like even though I don't think I've ever had experience where like a reporter picks up my release, like they're like, oh, awesome, I want to write the story now. But I still do think it's like great to do it for like the informational component. Like you do include like what it is that you're doing, some factual information. I still always do like them as like an exercise or like an announcement. So kind of like what the group did, like in terms of like just having information out there, announcing what you're doing and like why you're doing it. What about the other group who reached out to the government ally or the congressperson?
We already have a meeting booked with our congressman. He's going to talk to us about our initiative, so it went good. No, just kidding. I'm going to share the screen to show what we wrote together, which was really nice because I do like working in groups, because it's like, even though you might think one thing, when they suggest something, you're like, oh, that makes it so much better. Or it helps you not get so jumbled, and making sure that everyone sees the same point of view, coming from different point of views. So I really liked your activities. So ours was writing to a congressman or congressperson. So we did a Mission Hills Community Lending Center is encouraging you to support and we made up this act, so don't call us out, don't say there's nothing, like, we made it up. We wanted to sell you on this. So Mission Hills Community Lending Center is encouraging you to support the Youth Financial Health Act. NHCL consistently provides innovative programs and development services to San Fernando. This act will support our Penny Saver initiative launching in 2022, which provides money management, coaching, and financial goal setting. Our Penny Saver initiative addresses the economic challenges in San Fernando, including 63% of people live paycheck to paycheck. Your support will help our youth become financial stewards for the community and our nation as a whole.
Yeah, that's great. Sorry, by the way, if you all hear background noises, construction outside my apartment. Yeah, so yeah, this is great. I think similar in terms of like, since you are reaching out to a specific person, just like have your contact information there. And like, I know I didn't give you any contact information in the case study, but if you had like Miranda, like, you know, here's my number, that kind of stuff. Does anybody else have any feedback or like experience to share? Like, have you had to reach out to any Congress people or like government allies or like just like advocate essentially just like on behalf of your community or any bills?
We kind of had that situation happen to us because well, what made it harder is we had to inform our governor of our issues. Even though he lives in the Pueblo and he's an enrolled tribal member, you know, there's still those things that he doesn't see on a day-to-day or, you know, a yearly basis that we as a CDFI do when it comes to housing or savings or those issues financially. So he had the chance to go to the Capitol and they were doing a discussion on, I can't remember what it was, but I think it was for lending or just getting an outlook at native CDFIs. And so we had to actually create his bullet points because it was him talking and Tiwa lending was being mentioned in that. And so he came to us and we had to kind of prepare him, kind of let him know our history, remind him of our history, remind him of our purpose. And my boss, Sheila, the executive director, went to that, you know, meeting with him, but, you know, she couldn't help him with anything because she had to sit in the audience. So it was kind of, we had the chance to get exposure and we had to give it to someone else to pass along. And that's, I think, kind of was really awesome, but was hard at the same time because they, you know, so when you're working in this work, you might not be able to, you can express it better, but somebody else might not be able to share the same information you have or remember the challenges and stuff. So we got that exposure, we got to reach it to the Capitol, but it was through a third party. And that's, I think, kind of was a cool experience, but was kind of hard as well. And, you know, my boss was on the plane with him and she was like, she's going over everything with him, bullet points and reminding him. So it was hard going through a third party, but it was nice that it reached that far.
Yeah, that's great. And it seems like you did touch on a few things in terms of like, you're the ones who prepared the talking points. It seems like you had historical information, some current data, and just like making it digestible so that he can essentially like parrot it, so that he can just like boom, 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 also include this data when he puts out there, right? So yeah, that's also like a skill in terms of like making things comprehensive and detailed, but also just like memorable and just like having those like, were they bullet points that you prepared for him?
Yeah, there was a sheet with bullet points of just kind of highlighting the issues and challenges, and then like another sheet showing how we're addressing them. So yeah, it was in bullet point form, and it's, you know, it's kind of just funny trying to teach our governor that we're here, we, you know, what we do, even though we worked with him in his office and he sees us every day. It was just kind of funny just trying to educate him and giving him homework of like, you need to read this or make sure you pay attention to this. And it was the chance just to be like, oh, you know, we're reaching the Capitol, and then, like I said, it being through a third party just made the experience different.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to share or any questions?
So one of my, I think, past experiences was not necessarily writing, but like the face-to-face, and you just get like a few minutes to, because this was in college, it was the president of our student senate, and we had to go to Capitol Hill to lobby for AHAC funding. And it was like they threw us in the room and basically had to do an elevator speech, and that was challenging. I was like, wow, like this.
Yeah, I still haven't really nailed that one down yet. But I do think it's similar in terms of like, who are you going to give your pitch to? What's the essence of your pitch? Like, what's at the core of it? And then like go from there. Yeah, well, thank you all for joining me. So if there are no other questions or comments, then I think we can just end a little bit early. Thank you all for joining me for this hour and a half. Like, I hope it was helpful for you. Like, I always do get like joy out of working with our partners, especially in like a smaller, intimate setting. So thank you for taking the time today. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining, and you have 15 minutes back in your day. If you have any questions for Denise, feel free to reach out. She's denise@awista.org, and check out our closing plenary this afternoon. And we look forward to seeing you throughout the rest of the conference. Tomorrow is the last day. So thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.